Okay. What a fine afternoon event, and welcome to Writers Read. And it's so good to have Ina Bray and Nancy Bardeen here. My name is Nancy Cope, and we're off and running with the poem that you already know, so I don't have to say a line and you say a line. So let's try it. Write, until you get it right. Then read aloud. You'll draw a crowd and bring us great delight. Next time, maybe we could have a little more joy in the. It was a little grim almost. So here we are. I'm going to start today with Ina's history in Writers Read. 2017, Ina, we had maybe 10 or 15 books on the back shelf, Ina. And Ina said at a library committee meeting, maybe they would like to read what they wrote. Good idea.
So you took it over.
Well, let's just give her a round of applause because she got this started.
You and Linda, wherever Linda is.
Thank you, Ina.
Thank
you. I
you.
just stopped Bill Augusta to tell him he is in volume 3. I have put volume 1 and 2 up there. And, excuse me, what's dragging here? And so we're already to volume 3 of Writers Read, which means many people. I just read the table of contents, and it tugs at my heart to see how many people have read and how we have their stories here to read again and again if you'd like to. So, Ina, here we are. How are you doing today? Okay.
I'm
all right.
I'm happy.
And tell us a little bit about what you're going to read. But before, I'm reminding myself, this week I asked Nancy and Ina to just mention a writer that I didn't want to use the word favorite. I can't stand being asked what my favorite color is or my favorite kind of pie is. But I wanted them to both think of a writer that kind of inspired them maybe or encouraged them to write. What writer did you think of, dear heart?
I thought immediately of, can you hear? Sorry. What was it?
Move it up closer to your mouth.
Closer to my... Okay, 1, 2, 3. All right. Edmund de Waal, he's a very famous ceramicist, but he wrote a story called The Hare with Amber Eyes, the hare, hop, hop, hop. It's a story of a Natsuki, which is a Japanese art piece, a tiny thing, and he uses that as a medium to go through the history of his family, which started in Odessa at the turn of the last century. They were extremely wealthy. They were on the same level and the same circles as the Rothschilds, except the Rothschilds were in the West and they were in the East. And so they traveled, so to speak. Their history goes through from Odessa, eventually to Vienna, eventually to Paris, and then eventually Edmund himself is now I think he's still alive, in Japan. Fascinating story, but he took an item, and that made the story. It wasn't a person, it wasn't an event, it wasn't a little item, a little thing, a little beautiful, special thing. And so for me, what I'm going to read, it was not that kind of an item, but it's an item. which had emphasis, which had deep meaning for me. And you will laugh at what it is, but it is, nevertheless, it was my life. And it also gives you a little bit of the story of that time period, which is right after the war in Germany. So that was Duval.
Thanks so much, Ina, and let's hear what you have to read today.
Can you verify that people are able to hear? I can hear you on that piece of equipment. I know I can barely hear you.
Brady. Risa, can I do anything more? No. Oh. I'll hold on to my little. It works? Okay. But I want to be sure that.
Frank, now speak.
All right, 1, 2, 3.
You may need
That's okay. All right, good. Let me know if you can't hear. I want you to hear. I'm here so that all of you would hear it, not just Nancy and I. All right. The story is my burgundy-colored velveteen princess dress. Over my now rather lengthy lifetime, for various reasons, I remember perhaps this, perhaps that piece of clothing, but not many. Yet one dress stands out, not because it caught the latest fashion, or its shimmering beads carried the highest price tag, or even because it reminded me of that romantic evening. None of these were considerations when one is some 12 years old and had just survived a war. No, the dress tucked away in that special corner of my memory once had belonged to an undoubtedly happy and, in my mind, oh so pretty girl in America. This was 1947 or so in Munich, Germany. World War II had just ended, but it would still take years before life in that war-torn and bombed-out country would reach any degree of normalcy, particularly us, refugees from Eastern Europe. Not just hope for the future, but everything seemed in short supply. Living space, food, clothing, books, even mundane items such as soap, writing paper, definitely cigarettes, and particularly smiles on people's faces. Everything. But almost immediately after the guns had gone silent, shiploads of donations began pouring into Germany. This invaluable aid came from nonprofit organizations, churches, or individuals, and primarily from the United States. The United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Administration, better known as UNRWA, and later the International Refugee Organization, IRO, acted as intermediaries. They provided transport and then organized the distribution. For a while, my mother worked for the Lithuanian Committee, an agency in Munich that dealt with various problems of Lithuanian refugees scattered throughout the American zone. In that capacity, occasionally she had access to donations of clothing from America. One rainy November afternoon, she came hurrying home from work in great excitement. We would be able to choose some clothing from a shipment that had just arrived. I had just returned from school. The tram took the two of us to a warehouse, a very busy distribution center somewhere on the outskirts of the city of Munich. Outside this colorless industrial building, people were rushing about, clutching onto huge bundles. They reminded me of ants that had discovered a sugar lump and now were scurrying with determination this way and that, holding on to their prized booty, and prized it was. We, along with perhaps 24 others, must have been given a number or some other means of identification and a limit of how many pieces of clothing we could select. What a sight greeted us when we entered the unventilated hall. In the center loomed a huge mountain of stuff, taller than I, a complete mixture of every garment imaginable, from baby clothes to fur coats to silky evening gowns of every conceivable size, not necessarily clean, but there for the taking. To find something for my brother, my father, and for herself, my mother had to work fast. I, on the other hand, had only myself to think about. Full of curiosity, I admired one garment after another that so recently had sensed American air and American bodies. I mean, that was special. You don't know how important America was for us Europeans, whether Germans or otherwise. America was right next to heaven. So full of curiosity, I admired one garment after another that so recently had sensed American air and American bodies. Yes, every article already had previous experiences, but for us, that didn't matter. The feel of the materials, the astonishing vibrancy of color, that was so typical of America. The cuts, even the buttons, all seemed so wondrous. My loot grew as I added another blouse or nightgown or sweater to my tightly clutched bundle.
Take your hand off.
I'm sorry?
Take your hand off and just speak.
Okay.
It's louder then.
All right. Which piece to choose? That I would decide later. And then I dug out the ultimate find. A burgundy-colored velveteen dress with a skirt that could flare out like the bloom of a hollyhock. And if you don't remember what hollyhocks look like, come and take a look at it. In my world, white skirts existed only on ballerinas, or, as pictures in magazines, waste of precious fabric, people would say. In my hands I held this fairy tale marvel, created for a princess, or for me. We returned home jubilant. That night my family celebrated with our very own fashion show. Crumpled and perhaps not particularly fresh-smelling, but such an expansion of our inventory of clothes for every member of the family, and all at once. That had not happened in many years. 2 shirts and slacks for my father, jacket, blouse, and hat for my mother, pants and sweater for my brother, in addition to socks, underwear, and other basics. My burgundy-colored dress, however, remained the highlight for me. I slowly put it on, and oh, how I twirled and danced and made the skirt flutter. As if by magic, no longer was I a refugee, but an excited American girl. I still can see the style of the dress. Ribbed bodice, short-sleeved, rounded neckline, zipper down the back, and that full, soft skirt that seemed to swish with every movement I made. To complete the transformation of the dress into a princess dress, a few days later my mother sewed on some cream-colored, pointy lace to the neckline and to the sleeves. This handful of lace, this treasured luxury, my mother had tucked in among the few but vital necessities that we had taken with us when we fled home. Now all I needed was an event to show off my prize. And that event was soon in coming. To celebrate Christmas, some Lithuanian parents decided that there should be a Christmas party for the children who lived in our part of Munich. In one of the requisitioned villas, they procured a large living room with a piano. Some organization provided snacks, and Santa Claus would give out presents. But tradition demanded, that was in my childhood, that gifts had to be earned. Children had to perform for Santa. So for weeks, boys and girls practiced their instrument, memorized poems or songs, perfected their dances, or polished whatever talent parents could elicit from them, all for that magnificent Christmas presentation. For me, since early childhood, that mandatory recital for Santa always put a shadow on his coming. There was no guarantee that this formidable old man actually would reward us. What if my performance did not live up to his standards? Or worse yet, what if I made a mistake? But that evening in Munich was different. In a festive room full of chattering children and adults milling around the fragrant, candle-lit Christmas tree, my burgundy-colored velveteen princess dress indeed provided magic for me. When my turn came, my piano playing went off flawlessly. Still today, I smile as I remember how my fingers just danced over the keys, and my melodies that my composer father, had written for me, enveloped us all. Did Santa recognize my effort? I don't remember, since it no longer mattered. My Christmas tree, the burgundy-colored velveteen princess dress with lace trimmings, already had been delivered. As the months went by, my dress participated in a few more celebrations or events, but those were rare in those days. Yet it did own a place in the wardrobe, and occasionally I would hold it to my cheek, perhaps smell the perfume from a mysterious source that still lingered on it. My princess dress seemed like a secret friend, particularly when an emotional need arose. Unfortunately, I grew, but my dress did not, and the time was drawing near when we would have to part. My family incessantly applied to countries that potentially might accept us as refugees. Venezuela, Australia, Madagascar, Argentina, Colombia, Canada. America, of course, stood at the apex of our wishes, but my parents, my father a musician, my mother a college instructor, simply did not have the required blue-collar skills. But in preparation for any possible emigration, my mother continuously sold off our meager possessions. Since my brother and I were still growing, our clothes were the first to go. Ever resourceful, my mother decided that East German refugees housed in camps way outside of Munich might make good customers. These evacuees owned even less than we did, because their escape had been even more perilous than ours, and also they had arrived in the West later. And indeed, they welcomed our pots, our pans, our outgrown clothing, and who knows what else. In our final months in Munich, as our paring down intensified, I became the pack mule for these excursions. Oh, how I hated these selling trips. I felt as if I were a beggar, which in some sense, both my mother and I were. In spite of my flawless German, I also was keenly aware of the subsurface tension between us, the foreigners, and these displaced Germans. How they played out, I don't remember, but I sensed the ever-present hostility. My mother would assuage my discomfort, explaining that our visits had nothing to do with political or psychological conflicts. She only sought an exchange of goods for money. So, she and I would put a smiling face and watch our carried-in stock slowly diminish. More than a year after my brilliant Christmas recital, on a sunny, very friendly day, my mother and I made another expedition to the East Germans. That one I remember so clearly. On this trip, I would say goodbye to my princess dress. With permission from the camp authorities, my mother was allowed to go into those vast dormitories, row upon row of beds with no shielding for privacy. Here people lived, slept, and waited for their for their German future. On someone's bed, for the entire room to see, we displayed what we had packed into our suitcase. Excuse me. Towels, a checker tablecloth, a few of my father's neckties, an assortment of clothes, and various other articles. My burgundy-colored velveteen dress with a lace trimming I wanted to present myself. I unwrapped it from the stiff brown paper. Lovingly, I laid it out on its wine red splendor, and in a beam of sunlight, with the skirt spread out like a fan. And at that moment, I realized the dress no longer belonged to me. I barely could hold back my tears. With a group of others, a woman came up, and hiding behind her, a girl younger and smaller than I. Tenuously from around her mother's neck, the girl looked and looked, and then slowly reached out to stroke the velvety material. No words were exchanged between mother and daughter, only a smile, and I knew I was observing another princess come into being. Our sojourn ended before the day had closed. As evidence of our successful trip, I now carted home an almost empty suitcase. My mother could add to the fund that eventually would buy us an oil painting, which would be taken to our new existence in whatever country that would accept us. As immigrants, she was convinced that we would never again be able to afford the luxury of a painting. On the way home, the bus took us through some sections of Munich that had escaped devastation. Trees again covered their branches with intense green. Here and there, gardens sprouted vegetables or showed off a profusion of flowers. Closer to the city, we passed apartment areas where even pedestrians and bicyclers seemed to move with refreshed energy. Nature continued to renew itself, and so did humanity. That gentle yet bittersweet afternoon in late spring of 1948 had stayed for me to this day. I parted with something that had brought me so much happiness, but I also had seen the shining eyes of a scrawny little girl when she had touched the softness of the cloth of my dress. I went away from her, but I knew that soon my burgundy-colored velveteen princess dress, the dress that had carried a tiny bit of America to me, would work its magic on her as well, and she would sparkle. And that recognition melted my pain. Thank you.
I can just imagine you in that dress. I really can. And Ina, we're going to have Q&A now, and I have a question, but let's start with the audience. Is there anybody that has a question for Ina? What a story of being in a different place completely for your childhood. I mean, it is, every time I hear this story from Ina, I just take a gasp. Are there any questions? Pam?
Ina, when in fact did you find out you were coming to America?
1949, but then I developed TB, and they wouldn't take me, so we had to wait a year before they were sure that it was contained. In those days, medicines were a rarity, and especially again for us refugees.
And were you in Munich?
We were in Munich
that
all
whole
the time.
time?
Yeah, right, right. But I healed, obviously, and they let me in.
Anybody? Priscilla? Was it to America that you went? Was
Yeah.
your
we had-
dream, another dream came true?
yeah, another thing.
And
yeah.
for us.
Yeah, thank you. There was a sponsor in Indiana who had offered us a
Okay.
year of room and board in exchange for labor. But then that didn't work out at the last minute. So we were in the harbor of New York. And fortunately, there was somebody from an organization, a Lithuanian organization, who had come to help us because we didn't speak English. So she had to help us do whatever we needed to do. So now she had the problem of we being in America with $12 as all that my mother could bring in, and that was illegal as well. And so, fortunately, my mother had a cousin in California, and he had offered to help us in case of absolute need. Well, believe me, we had an absolute need. And so we went to California.
How old were you at that point?
I was 15.
15. Ina, my question is for you to help me understand what that word refugee
Uh-huh.
means to you. And were you called? Did
Yeah,
you hear that word?
Right, we were refugees, yeah, because we fled. I mean, there were several million who fled Eastern Europe into Germany, primarily, because there was no one else to go. Finland was at war. Sweden was neutral, wouldn't accept people, with very few exceptions. Denmark, Norway were occupied. England was at war. France was at war. Italy was at war. So there was no place to go in Europe. Some people managed to get to Persia, to Iran at the time. But most people, if they could at all, went to all these other countries that I had enumerated: Canada, Australia, South American, all kinds of South American countries, and many to America. Eventually, America opened up its doors, and Congress passed a law, and in 1948, people began to be able to come with tremendous restrictions, but they came.
Yeah.
So
Amazing. You have more to write about, Ina.
I'm running out of time.
Reading for the next chapter. Any more questions here? Good, good, good. Is there somebody? Oh, thank you.
I'm curious about your brother. Was he older, younger? As adults, did you talk about your experience?
He was 12 at the time when we came to America. So we had more or less 4 years between us, 3.5. Not really, because everybody had gone through the same experiences, and we all had been hungry. We all had been, it was a very hard time. So you didn't want to remember it. You didn't want to discuss it. You just went forward. In fact,
Wow.
there's so much of my parents' family I don't know because we just didn't talk about it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Let's hear another round of applause for this. And Nancy, you can come up. Thank you, Ina. Now, Reese is on her way here, Ina, so she will give your gear to Nancy Bardeen. And, oh. There we go. There we go. Oh, thank you very much. Good, good, good. Yeah, nice. Nice. Oh. Oh, my.
Just want you to know that, but it
Well,
Do you want to put it on the table or something?
yeah, I'll put it on the table.
So you can move this a little bit closer,
Uh,
but don't hold it.
Don't hold it. Okay. Put that in
Can
there.
you say hello? Just do a sound check.
Pardon me?
Just say hello.
Hello. Can anybody hear me? I'm getting hearing aids next month, so I can't hear anything now. If, hello. So if you start booing me, I won't know.
Good sound, folks? Okay.
Is it okay? Yeah, okay. Now,
Oh,
as when we met at the beginning to talk about what we were going to do here,
yes.
you said we should pick something that of our favorite something.
Well, I tried not to use the word favorite, to tell you the truth, because favorite is so momentary.
Well, I've loved this for
But
decades, so
you can answer any question any way you want. We just love to hear your story, no matter what. So do tell us what you want to say.
okay. Well, I'm just going to talk about this because I brought it, and the only problem with this book is that it doesn't fit in your handbag when you get on a plane.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to talk about a course that was given about 25 years ago by a classics professor. He set up a private course to teach us the Iliad in Greek. So it was a wonderful opportunity to hear real Greek.
Sure, your chair. Should I move your chair just a little bit? Oh, it's on wheels.
Don't
Good,
trip
good,
on
good.
my cane.
Now just stay put for a minute. And let's go this way. Is this going to do something? Oh, Reese is going to be upset with me. Okay. And that's not a fun experience when Reese is upset. Okay, are you ready?
I guess.
Okay.
Okay, so I asked my favorite all-time book for decades is Homer, and this is a new translation by a professor at Bard, a classics professor, and he's done something different. Instead of using iambic pentameter, which is what the translations usually use, he's done dactylic hexameter. And don't worry, all it is instead of da 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 da, it's da 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 da. That's it, okay? And it fits Homer beautifully. It changes the whole rhythm. And you wouldn't know that unless you'd studied some Homer. And I studied very little Homer, but just enough to know that that made the music of Homer that you didn't get. I had already read several translations in English over the decades that I loved Homer, but this was just, and there are other things he did too. There are longer lines, but it's beautiful. Menanaye de teya. Oh, it makes Homer lovely. Okay, so I'm putting in a pitch for that, and then I'll let you bought a copy of this, and you like the introduction. Yeah, we have testimony here.
Now, could you tell us the translator's name?
Alan Ron, and I gave Linda a copy of the newsletter from his Northwest Society of Classical Studies. What he set up was the Northwest Society of Classical Studies, and we went and studied
Oh.
Iliad. He did the Iliad. I didn't like the Iliad, but we did it.
Now, Nancy, when you don't have anything to do, how about an interest group for some folks who would love to read Homer with you?
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, no, you know what? I'm really looking forward
to going to assisted living because I'll have lots of time, finally, to read Homer. Okay.
Okay.
I can't wait.
Thank you, Nancy. And today we'll move into the now,
We're moving
if
to the now.
possible. That was a good side trip, dear heart. Okay.
Now, for people who saw From Mao to Mozart, which was Isaac Stern's, he was in Beijing about 9 years. Mao to Mozart. It was the musicale here. People heard it. Yeah. It was Isaac Stern, the violinist, and he was one of the first people that was taken into China after Deng Xiaoping started to open up China. It was the beginning, and if you remember, the clothes, all the people in the audiences all wore white short sleeve shirts. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, all dressed the same. It was the beginning of the opening that Deng Xiaoping tried unsuccessfully, as it turned out, to do. Okay, and so I think this is, we went into China 9 years later after that film that you saw. So that opening had been happening for 9 years. And the reason I decided to read this is because people have read about their visits to China over the years here. Wonderful, to Beijing, Shanghai. Beijing and Shanghai were really manicured to face the outsiders. There are a lot of other important cities in China that weren't manicured like that. And even after 9 years of being open, they were still very primitive. Okay, now when I explained this to her that I was going to read this, I said, I think I'll call it Glimpses of China. I told her a little bit about it, and I said, we were loose in China. She said, that's your title, Loose in China. So thank you. Here we go. Loose in China. As a native New Yorker, I thought nothing about hot summer subway commutes and rush hour crowds. But the ocean of Chinese humanity that stretched endlessly before us on our descent in Nanjing left me speechless. It was summer of 1988. My husband, James Bardeen, had been invited with several Western colleagues to lecture in physics that summer at Nanjing University. I, along with our 14-year-old sons, Will and David, had the incredible good fortune to be tagging along. It was a pivotal moment in Chinese history. In those waning months of Premier Deng Xiaoping's reform efforts to open China to Western democratic influences, visiting Americans were afforded encounters with China unencumbered by the succeeding decades of organized tourism and control. Free to wander around unescorted, wherever curiosity took us while Jim was working, the boys and I began by heading off mornings on foot to explore. To skirt the language barrier, I carried a large bag over my shoulder, stuffed with the day's provisions, food and water, clothing, guidebooks, first aid, identification, and so forth, and wanting to make sure we could find our way back to our lodging, since I spoke 3 words of Chinese. We stuck to the nearby road that led out of the city toward Beijing. Was it market day or every day that its side paths were lined with a churn of noisy people overseeing their containers of all kinds? Tubs of plastic or metal filled with water to hold assortments of creepy aquatic creatures, endless lines of boxes in all conditions, confining pathetically scruffy animals or birds, or summer fruits and vegetables, all for which milling tangles of customers were bargaining to take home for dinner. We watched it all in fascinated interest, unaware that we ourselves were being closely observed in return. Back on the Beijing Road the following day, the boys and I stepped aside from the fray to drink some water from our bag. I became aware of someone watching us, who was then joined by several other people and several more, until we realized we were surrounded, the object of intense interest to a crowd. They seemed neither friendly nor hostile, just sort of curious. I didn't get it at first, and then I did. It was our bag. I smiled my friendliest smile and slowly handed Will and David its contents, object by object. Then I acted very housewifely and shook out the empty bag. By the time we'd refilled it, our observers had melted back into the crowd. In following days, the boys and I were joined by a young woman who spoke excellent English. She had been instructed to show us some places of interest in and around the university grounds. It was during this time we witnessed two scenes which I will never forget. She led us into a university library, and we entered an enormous room filled with bookshelves. Save for a few books leaning in corners, the shelves were completely empty. When we inquired about the books, she said all the library's books had been burned during the Cultural Revolution. The remaining few we saw had been hidden and returned by professors. She also took us to a large, littered, sandy field where we stopped in front of a jagged hunk of cement wall, half buried, with some writing on it. She explained it was all of her college that was left after the Cultural Revolution. At the time, I thought the memory of these violent events explained the tenseness she'd always displayed in our company. Only after hearing about subsequent political events did I wonder if maybe not only the past, but also the future had been weighing on her mind. Scenes of intriguing cultural contrast can show up in unexpected places. One time we stopped to watch a group of 5 or 6 young people at a gas station engaged in a fill-up, one of few gas stations. That was why we stopped and looked. There weren't that many. While one of them was pointing the hose nozzle into the car, the rest, male and female, were lined up behind him, hose in hands, engaged in an effort to help push the gas along in the hose. Now, a group of young Americans with the same job would have left the fill-up to one of them while the others stood around waiting for him to finish. An interesting display of a difference between our cultures. It was very significant yeah. Another was China's strictly enforced one-child policy, preferably a son. On several occasions, I became a celebrity. Young women asked to be allowed to touch me, the mother of twins, for luck. One condition our academics had placed on their participation in Nanjing was for meals to be shared with the students. This arrangement afforded valuable opportunities for social interaction and also guaranteed they would enjoy the same quality of food. Evening meals for several weeks were worn were warmly looked forward to, with our discussions honest and friendly, until that last dinner in Nanjing. We were called to the dining hall very late. Upon entering, we were dumbstruck. The usual order had been replaced by chaos. The tables were cluttered with scattered, half-filled dishes and littered with the remains of a meal. The floor was covered with debris, chicken bones, discarded food, trash. Our usual companions were nowhere in sight. Served silently, we ate as quickly as possible and left. We were mystified. Only afterward did we learn how soon the People's Liberation Army would be crushing the student protests in Tiananmen Square. Much later that night, after we had finished packing to leave for Xi'an, we had to walk a few blocks away for some tickets. It was already quite dark. We took flashlights. Nanjing still did not have electricity, nor did most of China. Will recalls that all the people in Nanjing were wearing the same blue one-piece jumpsuits, except for our students who were in t-shirts and pants. Will especially recalls his surprise that little kids wore short one-piece blue overalls with 2 buttons, one on each side of the bottom of the back, attached to a flap that dropped down to allow them to go to the bathroom in the gutter. He also remembers that when we landed in Shanghai from Tokyo, we were immediately to a lunch of a big bowl of eels that our hosts immediately started slurping down. It struck us as rude, but was clearly not bad etiquette in China, or that part of China. In Shanghai, Will also remembers the Bund, the business center of colonial Shanghai left by the British. At that time, those were the tallest buildings in Shanghai. When you looked across the water, there was only farmland. We went to Xi'an from Nanjing. This trip, before the development of the modern railway system, which is incredible, included a long night's ride northwest through countryside where only the far-off glow from a TV revealed we must have been passing by some distant village. Will remembers being in the top bunk, and when he woke up and stuck his thumb into a ceiling fan, it came back filthy black. In Xi'an, he adds, he enjoyed the first tasty meal, a good assortment of dumplings. In Xi'an, we headed for the tomb of the first emperor, which they were still in the early stages of opening. Some Chinese with notebooks were poking around here and there, but it was completely open and unguarded. Out of respect, we remained on the peripheries, studying the lines of terracotta warriors with their famously unique faces and headgear. When we wandered around to one side and found an old empty wooden shed, I ducked inside to explore. In the back was a window that looked out to a grassy field dotted with blossoms of what looked like Queen Anne's lace. For a transfixing moment, I was again that little kid peering at Queen Anne's lace out the window from a similar shed in back of my grandfather's farm in Pennsylvania. Aside from those in our group, the only other Caucasian we saw in Xi'an was a young man bicycling along a city street. Return to Beijing held the promise of fulfillment of my lifelong dream. In a rental car, a Chinese friend took our family an hour away from the city to drop us off at a remote stretch of the Great Wall. There were a few people visible in the distance, and he left us alone to scramble over a centuries-old crumbling section. The wall's repair and reconstruction mostly still lay in the future. Jim and the boys took off one way, and I turned the other by myself to explore what appeared a passable stretch. How to describe the unreality of that moment? I was living a dream. Was it real? But then how to possess it? I began walking slowly through wisps of a million ghosts of enchantment to one of the numerous intermittent fortifications, whose walls were entangled with splays of vines to meet the thick foliage rising halfway out of the dense green below. And then a woman was there, young, old, rising waist high out of the green tangle below. It was so strange. I don't remember feeling scared or even startled. Then it got even stranger. She started putting her fingers around her neck, squeezing with choking motions. Her face held no expression as she kept staring at me, squeezing her neck with even more vigorous gestures. Then suddenly she stopped and disappeared silently back into the branches. Was she threatening? She was in no position to touch me. I kept staring at the branches, waiting. But she was alone. Or was she? I walked straight back to meet Jim and the boys, and the ride back to the city for the plane to take us home, my dream now grounded in reality. A further grounding in reality awaited us 5 short months later when we watched films of the student massacre in Tiananmen Square. Whether the students we had befriended in Nanjing were among them, we never found out, although several of our Chinese hosts subsequently had to leave China for good and accepted permanent positions in American universities. In all the years since, I have pondered the meaning of the woman in the wall at the wall. When I've described the experience to Western friends, they've largely interpreted her as threatening. But I have come to disagree. She knew there were others hidden in those bushes. During Deng Xiaoping's effort to foster trust and understanding between our two very different cultures, this had, after 10 years, produced changes. I think she was simply a woman warning another woman. In my subsequent years of befriending Chinese students, I had many Chinese students. This was my first introduction to Chinese people. And I tutored a couple of doctors for a long time, private tutoring of Chinese that were going to go back to China, who didn't like America that much. We're not that popular. In my subsequent years of befriending Chinese students, their confidences have convinced me that Chinese and European cultures see reality in some profoundly different ways. We are at this time, hopefully, on a journey which can lead us to work today on reconcilable efforts to continue to coexist. And I'd like to add a funny.
Yes, she has an additional reading.
It's very short.
Very short, but I'm just stunned and absorbing your amazing story with your two
It's a little
sons.
different.
Let's at least clap once, if not twice. Amazing, Nancy. Okay. Oh, this will be
just
fun,
this.
won't it? Okay.
Now, it doesn't have a title.
Oh,
That's your job. You might identify a little with this in one way or another, or maybe not. Old, you say? Oh, no, not me. That's other people that I see. No shame to puff when you're in a hurry. So what if distances look blurry? 'Cause what the heck? I've seen it all already. If I can't recall a name or two, just give me time. I'll recite heaps. My memory's fine. Tons of poems rally to me. By the shores of Gitche Gumi. Does that ring a bell? Not my fault that shells grew taller or buttonholes have gotten smaller. On fastenings I've turned the page. We're living in the Velcro age. Foot issues? When I sally forth and my right foot's pointing north with the big toe pointing east, hammer toes don't care the least if they're upstage. I'm through with jogging. Much more fun to spend time blogging, especially at 3 a.m. When wide awake, I haunt the den. I prayed the Lord my soul to keep, but he never promised sleep. For that, I think I need an app to keep track of my daily nap. Those creaky joints I feel on rising, it's not old age they're advertising. They prompt a shopping spree instead. Just need to buy a better bed. But first, I'll have a cup of tea. Old, you say? Oh, no, not me. Thank you.
The title could just be Old, question mark?
Old. Thank you. I'll put it
But
right there.
Include the question mark.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, question.
Questions, comments, observations for Nancy Bardeen. What a treat this hour has been.
How old were your boys when you took them to China?
They were just out of junior high. And they became inveterate travelers. They've traveled all over the world. They are afraid of nothing. They just sent me some pictures from a lava cave, really spooky cave in Galapagos, the Galapagos Islands. They were down there.
Oh my. Yeah. Any more questions and observations and comments? Ina.
Well, did your boys ever concentrate on China? I mean, this obviously was such a huge experience. Did that have a permanent effect on them or interest? China, yeah.
No. They were interested in everything. I mean, they went around the world. They hitchhiked, in Asia and got into all kinds of things. And they survived. They met some things that kind of scared me, but they got out of it. China, no. I was the one that was entranced with China. As soon as I'd been there that first time, that was interesting. It's so different. It's so profoundly different at the very basic levels.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they don't particularly like us. I made friends. We were, yeah.
I have a comment about your saying that the guide that you had at one point seems so tense. Did I understand that correctly? When we were in China, we were on a Rhodes Scholar trip, I think, or King FM trip. And we were irritated by the fact that when we were seeing people selling kites, the guide with us kept saying, oh, don't buy those. Don't buy. You're going to love the store, the official store, and buy your kites. And obviously that the better ones were outside. And we asked afterwards, about that, and were told that if anybody felt that they had been cheated by buying from the vendors out of the store, that it was considered the fault of the guide, and the guide would lose his job. So maybe what you were seeing was that same insecurity of the guide.
Maybe. Or she was just nervous about being with Americans.
Yes.
She was just nervous about being with Americans.
Yeah,
'Cause
that could be.
they were obviously in the midst of a transition there. We were oblivious. We were just bouncing from one place to another. But that whole country was closing up again. And people who were informed realized that being with foreigners was not a good idea.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Nancy, I have a question. Yeah. Nancy, did you go back to China? Have you been back?
No.
That was your
My
one
husband
time.
went back quite a few times to a lecture, but I never went back. No. I'm sorry. If I had my life to live over again, I would head to China.
What a good afternoon. Thank you, one and all. And thank you, Nancy and Ina. And come back again and again and again. And Linda tells me that we do have a February program. We do have a February program, so look forward to that. Take care. Have a good afternoon. And dare I say, go Seahawks or not?